The letter that changed my life looked like junk mail. Thick paper, a glossy envelope, the kind of serious blue ink nobody uses anymore. It arrived on a windless Tuesday, the way trouble always does in small towns, quietly, like it's looking for a back door. I almost tossed it into the bowl where I keep coupons and takeout menus, but my name on the front was printed too carefully, like someone had practiced writing it. Evelyn May Harper. The May I only use when I'm in trouble. Inside, a bank with a skyline logo I didn't recognize thanked me for my business and asked for the third time this month when I planned to bring the mortgage current on a house I had never seen. The address was 2 towns over, near the highway where the new outlet stores went up. The loan balance was $248,000 in change, past due. There were late fees, there were consequences, there was a phone number in menacing bold. I thought, they've got the wrong person. I thought, they sent this to the wrong Evelyn. I thought a lot of reasonable things until I saw my Social Security number printed in the corner. It wasn't the whole number, just enough digits to make me feel like a person could take my skin off and wear it around the block. My hand started to shake. I set the letter down and looked at the kitchen window. On the sill, the basil I'd been coaxing from a starter plant leaned toward the light like it was praying, leaves bright and stubborn. I have always been a woman for whom small things grow. Tomatoes on the back stoop, young nurses in the wing I ran for 17 years, the widow's confidence I planted after Frank died. I read the letter again, and a sentence blinked red in my mind, as if the bank had shouted, "We appreciate your timely response regarding the property you own at 109 Millstone Court." I didn't own a property at 109 Millstone Court. I didn't even own the condo where I was standing. I rented it. And if the dishwasher leaked, I called the office and waited 3 days for a kid with a nose ring to show up with a wrench. I called the number. "Thank you for calling Autumn Ridge Servicing," a woman said. Her voice is cheerful and empty as a brand new balloon. "My name is Chantel. This call may be recorded for quality and security. With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" "This is a mistake," I heard myself say. "This is Evelyn Harper. This isn't my loan." There was a pause while she clicked something. "Thank you, Miss Harper. For security purposes, may I confirm the last 4 of your social, your mailing address, and your date of birth?" She had my social. She had my date of birth. She had the condo address. With each correct answer, something cold crawled up my spine. "Wonderful," she said. "How can I help you today?" "You already have," I wanted to say. "You've told me the ghost in my house is me." Out loud, I said, "Someone has made a mistake. I don't own a house at 109 Millstone. I never took out this loan. I've never heard of your bank." "Let me pull up your file," Chantel said. The keyboard clattering sounded like rain. "Okay. I'm seeing a mortgage originated 9 months ago. The title is under your name, solo, and separate, and there was a quitclaim deed filed 2 weeks later to shift title into Millstone Capital LLC. We show an escrow shortage and 8 missed payments. Do you still want to make a payment by phone, or would you prefer to speak with our workout specialists?" "I want to speak to someone who knows how to fix a nightmare." "I can transfer you to the fraud department." "Do that." While I waited, I stared at my refrigerator. On its door, there were photos of my son when he was 5, sticky with popsicle, and my son when he was 8 years old, a tooth missing and an entire future in his mouth. And my son when he was 34, in a suit he said he bought on sale. There was the list I kept of friends' birthdays. There was the magnet from the diner where the waitress calls everyone baby. "Fraud," a new voice said. Male this time, lower. Tired in the way people get when they've been awake with other people's bad choices too many nights. This is Jamal. What are we looking at today?
I told him. He asked if I had ever lost my wallet. He asked if I had given anyone power of attorney. He asked if anyone in my life might have access to my personal information. I told the truth, and I did not. When we were through, he gave me an email address for the department and a list of steps, like handholds on a cliff. File a police report, file an FTC identity theft affidavit, put a freeze on my credit across all 3 bureaus, contact the county recorder's office to get copies of any deed with my name on it, call every bank I knew and the ones I didn't. When I hung up, I stood in my small kitchen and listened to the silence of my life. You don't realize how loud safety is until someone turns it off. I washed my face at the sink because that's what I could manage. I put on the sweater Frank used to say made me look like New England in October, even though this was Ohio in April, and it smelled like rain and cut grass and new asphalt over by the strip mall. I picked up the letter and my purse. I locked the door. On the stairs, I ran into the building's new mail carrier, a woman about my age with a streak of purple through her gray hair that looked like a decision rather than an accident. "You all right there?" she asked. "You look like somebody told you the ocean moved." "Just paperwork." "Aren't we all drowning in it?" she said, kind, like a person who brings someone's medicine upstairs without being asked. "I'm Sharon. If you ever need me to hold something at the office, just leave a note." "Thank you," I said. I didn't know yet that I would. I got in my car, a Corolla with a dent on the passenger side nobody but me could see. I drove to the bank where my pension deposits, because it is the bank that has watched me grow older. The lobby smelt like lemon and old carpet. Behind the counter, a young woman with braids looked up and smiled, like I was a person and not a problem. "Hi," she said. "I'm April. What can I do for you?"
"I think my life is not my life," I said.
"Okay," April said gently. "Let's sit." We did at a little desk with a pen chain to it. I slid the letter across. Her eyebrows went up, and I could feel my heart pound visibly in my neck the way it did when I saw an ambulance pulling into the ER bay when I was charge nurse on the night shift. "We'll start with what we can control," April said. "We'll pull a credit report, and we'll put a freeze on your profile. We'll add notes to your account that any changes need to be in person with 2 forms of ID. We'll print everything out." She made it sound like building a fence, and fences make sense to Midwestern women of a certain age. We have built fences around everything we can't bear to lose. It took an hour. When the printer finished spitting out page after page, April had the stack hole punched and put into a binder she fished from a drawer like she'd been waiting for me in my binder-shaped catastrophe. She slid it over like homework. "Here is what shows on your credit," she said, tapping the first page with a pen the color of sky. "This one is your car. This one is a store card you've had since 2002. These, though," she circled 3 items, "these are new. Department store, gas card, and this mortgage." "I didn't open these." "I believe you." She said it like a vow. Kindness from a stranger is the first step back to yourself. January, that's when the department store card was opened. February for the gas card. The mortgage 9 months ago. Does anything line up for you around those times? That was when Lucas asked for money to cover a gap until his new job started. That was when I gave it to him. That was when he started deflecting my calls with texts. That was when he told me Janet was having a hard time and needed me to be flexible. That was when the space between us grew wide enough to drive a lie through. My throat went dry. "I need to go to the county recorder's office." "Do you want me to call and see if they can pull what you need before you get there?" "I do." April made the call and scribbled a name on a sticky note. "Ask for Carrie. She'll bring out whatever is on file. If something looks wrong, I'll help you write the dispute letter and the affidavit." "And Miss Harper?" "Yes." "Don't let anyone rush you. Scammers push. You move at your pace. On my way out, I stopped at the glass doors and watched the parking lot, the way you do when the world is both the same and irreversibly different. A man walked by carrying a bag of takeout that smelled like sesame and garlic, and I realized I had not been hungry since I opened the letter. I was thirsty, though. I went next door to the coffee shop with the chalkboard sign that always says something cheerful. Today it said, "You made it this far? Keep going." I ordered a plain coffee, black. I sat in a corner where nobody I knew would see me if I started to cry. I watched the door out of habit and hope. Frank used to walk through every door in my life with a look that said he'd found what he was looking for. Grief is a series of doors that never open again. I took a sip and rehearsed what I would do. Recorder's office, police report, the FTC website, the 3 credit bureaus, the phone calls. I repeated the list until my heart slowed down, until the list became a ladder. The recorder's office was in a brick building that used to be a library, then a tax office, then nothing for years until somebody decided the county ought to have nice things again. The lobby smelt like old boxes and new carpet. At the front window, a woman with a name tag that said Carrie smiled at me like she knew whose name was on the sticky note. "April called. We pulled everything you'll want to see. There are copies for you to take and the original records you can view on the screen." She turned the monitor so I could see. There was my name in the neat type of a deed, the kind that moves land around like it's a toy. There was a digital scan of my signature I did not remember making, slanted left instead of right, the loop on the Y too neat. There was a notary block with a name I didn't recognize, and a certification number like an address you hope you never have to visit. I stared at the signature until it was a pattern and not my name. "I didn't sign that," I said. Carrie nodded like she had heard those words before. "We have a process for disputes," she said. "You can file an affidavit of forgery. If a title company was involved, you'll notify them and your bank. If the deed was recorded using a fraudulent notary acknowledgement, law enforcement may investigate. It doesn't fix it today, but it starts a track toward the truth." I took the copies. I thanked her. I went to the police station, a low building that always looks like there should be a flag flapping above it and a cup of coffee waiting. The officer at the front desk was kind and brisk and wrote down my story while I held my purse like a shield. He gave me a case number and the polite distance of a man who has seen the ruins of holidays and paychecks and marriages and knows that the worst thing you can say to a person whose life just split open is that it happens all the time. I filed the FTC report at the library because my laptop is as old as a grocery list and the computers there hum like they approve of you. A teenager 2 chairs over was playing some kind of game without sound, his fingers flicking like birds. He looked over once, glanced at the form on my screen, and then looked away the way decent people do when someone is undressing a wound. By the time I got home, the basil had turned a little toward the afternoon light in the window. I put the binder April made for me on the table, opened to the first page, and ran my finger along the spine like I was learning to read again. I called my son. He picked up on the second ring, the way people do when they aren't yet afraid of the number on the screen. "Hey, Mom," he said. "What's up? I was about to hop into a meeting." "Where are you working now?" I asked. "Freelance," he said quickly. "Consulting gigs here and there." "Why?" "Because I got a letter from a bank about a mortgage I didn't take out." There was a silence that sounded like a text being typed and then deleted. "You probably got spam," he said finally. "You know how these companies are always sending stuff. Don't worry about it. Chuck it or forward it to me." They had my social. "Oh," he said, and that one syllable had every decision he had ever made in it. "That's weird. Did you sign my name to anything?" "Mom."
Lucas, you know I wouldn't do that. I closed my eyes. Mothers keep loving the kid inside the man, and sometimes the man hides behind that child like a tree. I want you to think about your answer, I said. I am thinking, he said, irritated now, like I was wasting his time. I have a lot going on. Jenna's uncle is in the hospital. The lease on our place is up. I can't be dealing with your male anxiety right now.
Did you use my name to get a loan? I can't talk, he said, and then he hung up. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark. A minute later, a text came through. I could see the preview before I opened it. Don't call the bank again until I talk to you. Until I talk to you. The ordinary cruelty of that sentence sat in my kitchen like a guest. I watered the basil. I sat down. I didn't cry. The tears had made a home behind my eyes and refused to come out until they could ruin my sleep. I picked up the binder again and went to work. The next day I was back at the bank. April made copies of the police report and stapled the FTC affidavit to the front like a diploma. We called the other 2 credit bureaus, and I was polite and relentless and spoke my date of birth 3 times to 2 different people who sounded like they were in rooms without windows. We filled out a fraud packet and sent it to Jamal in the bowels of the skyscraper where the mortgage monster lived. On the way out, I ran into Sharon again, coming up the steps to deliver a registered letter to someone else's life. That look, she said. That's the look of a woman who's got her hands around something slippery. I'm finding the edges, I said. Good. That's how you stop a thing from sliding off the table. Day 3, the phone calls started. First from a store I hadn't been in for years. Then some a gas cart company asking why I hadn't paid for $80 of Shell and $30 of gummy bears. Then from a collections agency that wanted to confirm my mailing address in case I loved surprises. In the afternoon, a new call, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. I stood by the sink and waited for the ding, the way you wait for a doctor to walk back in with a face that tells you everything. Miss Harper, the man's voice said, smooth as laminate. This is Dominic from Millstone Capital, LLC. We're calling as a courtesy regarding the property at 109 Millstone. We purchased the note several months ago and have been unable to reach you. I'd like to discuss options before we proceed with a trustee's sale. Please call me. Trustee sale. The words were a set of keys I did not want. I called April. Bring the voicemail in, she said. We'll save it. Everything written, everything recorded. The more facts, the less fear. I saved it. And then I did what terrified people do. Something ordinary and necessary. I made a grilled cheese. I ate half. I washed the plate. I took a walk around the block and I looked into the windows of houses where people were watching game shows and lives were not coming apart. On Mulberry Street, Mrs. Alvarez was trimming her roses. She waved with her clippers and I waved back. Little rituals between old neighbors are the stitches that keep a town from ripping when someone pulls too hard. When I got home, I found a note tucked under my door, written in my son's handwriting. Stop making calls. I sat on the couch and placed the note on my coffee table, as if I were a curator at a museum of bad ideas. The next morning I woke before dawn, the way you do when your body knows things before your mind will admit it. I made coffee. I read the binder out loud, as if words gain power from breath. I looked at the photos on the fridge and said to the boy with the popsicle, I love you. I love you enough to not let the man you became ruin me. At 9, I drove to the county courthouse.
I had asked April if she knew a lawyer who wouldn't charge me an arm and a spleen just to tell me I wasn't crazy. She gave me a name scribbled in pink ink, Devin Chu. On the second floor, past a hallway that smelled like old folders and stress sweats, I found his office. He was younger than my son by a decade and dressed like someone whose clothes don't matter because his brain does. "Miss Harper," he said, standing to greet me, "I read your email last night. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm glad you came in." We sat. I told him everything. I kept my voice even because I learned as a nurse that the more your patient panics, the calmer you must be, and the more you want to scream, the more you whisper. "Do you think I'm crazy?" I asked when I was done. "I think someone took advantage of you," he said, "and we're not going to let them finish the job." He explained what we could do: an affidavit of forgery for the deed, a temporary restraining order to halt any sale, notices to the bank and the LLC, a motion to quiet title if necessary. He said the names of the actions like rosary beads, and each one calmed me a little. He didn't promise me the ending. He promised me we would put one foot in front of the other. "Who did this?" he asked finally. "I have an idea," I said. "I don't want to say it out loud because that makes it true." "Understood," he said gently. "We don't have to name a suspect today. We have to secure your name." He had me sign paperwork. He took copies of everything. He handed me a folder with my name embossed on it, like respect. "Call me when anything changes," he said. "When they call you, don't answer questions, don't confirm facts, don't argue. Say, your attorney will be in touch. Then call me." On my way out, I exhaled for the first time in 3 days. It didn't fix it. It didn't even make a dent. But I had a name for the man who would stand between me and the people who had turned me into a math problem. Outside, the sky had decided to be brave. The clouds broke apart and a slow beam came through like a promise nobody could accuse of lying. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed on the table, vibrating like it wanted out. Lucas. I stared at his name the way you stare at a bridge you know is about to collapse. I answered. "Mom," he said, words tight. "What are you doing?" "I'm fixing it." "You can't just go around making legal claims against family," he said, and then said, "Too much. You don't know how these things work. You don't even know if the notarization was legit." A thing I had not told him, a thing he should not have known. The silence that followed was heavy and obvious. I could hear the TV in the background, the murmur of a daytime judge show, the clink of dishes. Jenna's voice somewhere too sharp, like a knife trying to be a spoon. "Lucas," I said, and I could hear the woman I was, not the mother I had tried to be. "Did you sign my name to a deed? Did you take out a mortgage using my social? Did you sell my name to a business with a mailbox and a website made on a Saturday night? Tell me." He said I was going to fix it, and the echo of that sentence from every man who ever thought love covered debt made me stand up from my couch and move to the window. "With what?" I asked. "With what job? With what honesty? With what time machine?" He said, "It was a bridge. A few months, max. We found a property we could flip. The lender needed a stronger borrower on paper, just a signature to keep it moving. We were going to carry it for a season, then sell, then clear everything. You were going to be taken care of." "You took care of me by making me invisible to myself." "That's dramatic," he said. "You forged my name," I said. "You committed a felony. You turned me into a cautionary tale in a pamphlet people throw away. And you want me not to be dramatic? You don't understand how hard it is out here, he said. And in that sentence, I heard every young man in every town who has been told that difficulty is permission. I understand enough, I said, and my voice didn't tremble. I'm filing the papers. I'm freezing the accounts. I'm not talking to you again until this is over or until you call me to tell me where to meet you to tell the truth to a stranger. Mom, please. Don't come to my house, I said quietly. Don't slide notes under my door. Don't talk to my landlord. Everything you want to say, you say to my attorney. Jenna's voice in the background, urgent. What'd she say? And Lucas muffled, she said lawyer. And then the call ended. I put down the phone and waited for the guilt to show up, like it always had, neatly dressed and persuasive. It didn't. In its place came something else, slower and sturdier. It felt like a tree root finding water. That night, I slept. It surprised me. I woke before my alarm to the sound of rain. I made oatmeal with banana because that's what you do when you're trying to remember you're not a ghost. I called Devin and left a message. I did not call Lucas. Nothing much happened for 6 days. Which is how it happens. You do something decisive, and then you empty the dishwasher, and you go for a walk, and you refill the bird feeder, and you sit in church and wonder if every sermon is secretly about your situation. And then you go to lunch with your friend Linda, who tells you about her son's wedding plans, and you nod at the right time while thinking about how legal language is a kind of math that can save you if you understand where to put the parentheses. On day 7, the sheriff's notice came. It was taped to my door with blue painter's tape the maintenance guys use when they want to be nice. Trustee sale scheduled. 21 days. The document looked like something you get when you lose a bet. I took it down and held it like a hot pan. Then I walked across the lot to the rental office, the one with the Keurig that never has pods. Chelsea at the front desk looked up, saw my face, and put her hand on her chest as if we both were women in a Southern novel. "Evelyn," she said, "what is it?" "The bank is trying to sell a house I don't own using my name, and I don't know what state I live in." "Sit," she said. "Do you need water?" "I need a time machine and a good son," I said, and we both laughed because what else do you do when weeping is for later? She read the notice. "We'll put a note in your file that no messages related to your housing go to anyone but you," she said. "People try to get information. They try to sneak. We won't let them." "Thank you," I said, and I meant thank you for the water, too. I called Devin. He called the trustee handling the sale, and then he called me back. "We have a hearing," he said. "Temporary restraining order to pause the sale. Day after tomorrow, 10 a.m. Do I have to say anything? Maybe. I'll do most of it. I'll show the judge the fraud report, the police case number, the credit freezes, the deed copies, and the fact that the LLC trying to sell your house has a mailing address that is a UPS store. Judges don't love that. If the judge asks you a question, just tell the truth." "I can do that," I said. "Also, there's a thing," he said carefully. "We requested the notary's logs from the company that ran the signing. You can do that? With a subpoena. You were apparently signed by a remote online notary. The session is recorded. We asked for a copy." The world held still for a second. Then I exhaled. "And we got it."
Devin, I said, and it was a prayer.
I watched it twice, he said. The woman in the video is not you, unless you got 10 years younger and a tattoo on your left wrist at some point you forgot to mention. I sat down hard in the plastic chair across from Chelsea's desk. It squeaked, and we both looked at it like it had spoken out of turn. Can I see it? I asked. You will, he said, at the hearing if we need to. We'll bring it on a laptop. It's compelling. It shows the notary checking an ID that looks like yours and asking 2 knowledge-based questions. What county do you live in? And what is your zodiac sign? My zodiac sign? I'm not kidding, he said. She guessed Pisces. You're a Virgo. Always have been, I said. I alphabetized my spices. He laughed, and the sound made the hallway where I stood feel less like a tunnel. Get some rest, he said. Hydrate. See you at 10, courtroom 2B. Courtrooms have a temperature that is not the same as the temperature in the rest of the building. It's cooler and it sinks inside your clothes. I sat on the wooden bench when the clerk told us to sit and watched the door where the judge would come in. There were other people, other tragedies in plastic folders. I recognized the look of someone whose life had turned into a permanent record. Devin sat beside me and whispered what would happen, like a flight attendant pointing to the exit row. When the judge came in, everyone stood. We sat. A woman in a blazer with pads on the shoulders read the first case. 2 lawyers said things, the judge said other things. The gavel wasn't used. The voice is the gavel. Then it was our turn. Devin stood and said my name. He said the LLC's name. A man in a suit that had opinions stood on the other side and introduced himself as counsel for Millstone Capital. The judge looked at the stack of documents in front of him with the weary affection of a man with too much paper in his house. Devin spoke in short sentences. Fraud, identity theft, police report, FTC affidavit, credit freeze, notary video, quitclaim deed executed without consent while Miss Harper was at a community center's chair yoga class as shown by the sign-in sheet we provided. The LLC had constructive notice of the fraud because the borrower's email in their file is in a different name. Pausing the sale will not prejudice the lender. Proceeding will irreparably harm an innocent person. The lawyer for Millstone stood up and talked about how the world works, and in his world, things that were written down in the registry were holy, and people like me were obstacles, and fraud is regrettable, but the train must keep moving, and if we don't hold people responsible for their signatures, chaos. Devin asked to play the video. The judge agreed. A laptop appeared on the counsel table like we were about to watch a movie about someone else's problem. The screen showed a grid. The notary in one box, a woman in another. The notary smiled, said her speech. The woman said her name was me. The notary asked the questions. The woman with my name said she lived in the wrong county and that she was a Pisces. She held up an ID to the camera. The judge leaned forward. Devin paused the video. He zoomed in. The screen filled with a rectangle of plastic and a picture of a woman who was not me, with hair darker than mine has been in 20 years, and an expiration date that did not match the date on my driver's license. The signature under the photo might as well have been the word liar. The judge put his hand over his mouth like he was thinking, or praying, or both. He watched to the end, where the notary congratulated the woman who was not me on her new loan. Then he looked at me. "Miss Harper," he said, and the whole room turned my way. "Did you authorize anyone to sign on your behalf?" "No, Your Honor." "Did you receive any proceeds from this loan?" "No." "Did you know about any of this before the bank sent you a letter?" "No." "Do you know who the woman in the video is?"
I swallowed. No. Do you suspect who arranged for her to be there? The room tilted slightly in my vision. I put both feet flat on the floor. I do. Do you wish to name that person here? No, Your Honor, I said. Not today. He nodded. Sometimes a judge is the only person in the building who can hold a person's dignity without dropping it. He looked at the other lawyer, whose posture had changed by 1 degree.
We're going to pause this sale, the judge said. Temporary restraining order granted. Counsel for the LLC, you'll accept service of the complaint to quiet title when it is filed? Good. Miss Harper, your attorney will submit an order. We'll set a status conference in 30 days. The gavel still didn't bang. It didn't have to. The sound in my chest was loud enough. Outside the courtroom, Devin smiled, the kind of smile that isn't victory so much as oxygen. We bought time, he said. Now we get to work. I can do that, I said. He reached into his bag and handed me a list. These are the companies that have the fake accounts in your name. Call each one. Send them the FTC affidavit and the police report. Tell them the same story, the same way. Keep notes, save everything. And Miss Harper? Yes? You did a brave thing in there. I wanted to say I felt like a leaf holding on in a wind I did not choose. Instead, I said, thank you. In the elevator down to the first floor, I watched my reflection in the mirrored doors. She looked like someone I would trust. When I got home, there was another note under my door. This one wasn't in Lucas's handwriting. It was printed, copied, and cut out to hide where it came from. It said, "Stop, or you'll regret it." I stood in the hallway and read it once, then again. Then I walked to Sharon's mail room and handed it to her. "Save this," I said. "If you see anyone loitering near my door, call the office." "Do you want me to call someone now?" "I'll call," I said. And then I called Devin first, then the non-emergency police line. A patrol car rolled through the lot 2 hours later, slow, authoritative. They logged the note. I put an extra chair under my doorknob like we used to do in the on-call room at the hospital when there was a patient who had threatened to find us where we slept. That night, Lucas called. "I didn't write the note," he said, before I could say hello. "I don't know who did," I said. "Jenna's cousin may have. I don't know. People get intense, but it wasn't me. Mom, I'm begging you, don't make this worse." "It gets worse if I stop. The only way out is through." "You think this is you being some kind of hero. You're going to destroy your relationship with me over paperwork. You destroyed it when you decided my name was a coupon," I said, and I hung up. Days blur when you're constantly explaining yourself to strangers. The voices change, the scripts don't. I told my story to someone at a card company in Texas who said, "Oh, honey," and someone at a gas card company in Ohio who said, "Hold please," and someone at a department store call center in Idaho who said, "We can close this, Miss Harper, we'll send you a letter." I made a spreadsheet because I'm a Virgo and because order is a way to make unfairness behave. I kept going to church. I kept watering the basil. I went to the community center on Tuesdays and helped Mrs. Alvarez set up for the senior tech class because she had seen the way I stared at my phone lately and thought I might want to be in a room where the hardest question is how to attach a photo to a text. I drank coffee with April during her break once because she happened to be at the coffee shop when I was, and we sat by the window and watched high school kids take pictures of themselves in front of the mural with the wings. "You ever think," I asked her, "that our names are just little boats and we spend our whole lives making them strong enough to not tip over?" "All the time," she said, "and when the wind picks up, you add ropes. That binder we made, that's rope."
In week 3, Devin called. "We got discovery," he said. "We have the account opening documents from the mortgage lender and title company files. There's a power of attorney included, allegedly from you granting authority to family." "I never signed a power of attorney." "It's a scan," he said. "No original. Signature looks like the one on the deed, not yours." "How did they get my ID?" I asked. "The notary used something." "We don't know yet," he said. "Sometimes people borrow a wallet. Sometimes they grab the mail. Sometimes a family member takes pictures of documents when you're sleeping and it finds its way into the wrong hands." "I keep everything in a box in my bedroom closet," I said, "in a folder, because I thought that's what responsible people do." "That is what responsible people do," he said. "Crooks count on that." We set a date for the status conference. The LLC's lawyer filed something that sounded like an apology and an accusation at the same time. They said they were innocent purchasers. They said they relied on public records. They sniffed at my insistence on calling a theft a theft. Devin filed a response that called a spade a shovel and asked the court to use it to dig up the truth. The hearing was less dramatic than the first. More paper moved from one table to another. The judge's eyebrows did interesting work. In the hallway after, the other lawyer approached us. "Ms. Harper," he said, smooth, careful, "I represent Millstone Capital. I want you to know this isn't personal." I looked at his tie. It had tiny anchors on it, which felt like a joke the universe made while it wasn't looking. "It is to me," I said. He lifted his hands a quarter inch, the international symbol for not my fault, and then he left. Devin watched him go the way a veterinarian watches a fox leave the hen house. A week later, my phone pinged with a message from Lucas at 10 at night. It said, "I'm outside. Please let me in." I sat at my little table and texted back, "No. Everything you need to say to me, say to Devin." "Please," he wrote, "I can explain." I wrote, "Don't be the kind of man who stands outside his mother's door in the dark." I watched the little dots. They came and went. Then my screen went blank. In the morning, I found a photo slipped under the door, printed on office paper. It was a screenshot of a bank balance with a number that would make anyone sleep. He had written in pen, "We're so close, one sale away. Help me finish." I put it in the binder. There is a place in the binder now for things that insult my intelligence. Around that time, the notices started to come back. The department store card zeroed out my balance and closed the account. The gas card removed the charges and flagged my profile. The mortgage company, the original one, sent a letter acknowledging my dispute. The LLC sent nothing. Silence is a strategy when your business model depends on people giving up. While all this was happening, life was happening. Linda's son got married in a barn, and everyone cried when he danced with his mother. The basil grew so fast I had to pinch it back. The high school kids took prom pictures around the fountain and giggled into their phones like joy could be stored for later. In church, the pastor preached about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, and I took notes as if I had a test the next day. Then Devin called again, and he sounded like a man who had found the missing receipt that explains everything. "Got a break," he said. "The notary's journal. The remote online notarization platform keeps a log. The system has an IP address for the signer that geolocates to a co-working space downtown. That co-working space requires keycard access. We subpoenaed the logs." "Devin," I said, "what are you telling me gently?" "That the key card used belonged to a woman named Serena Tate," he said. "She's Jenna's cousin, if the internet is correct." I sat very still. "We also have a surer fact," he said. "The AML, that's the anti-money laundering file, it's the lender's due diligence, has an email used to coordinate the closing. It's an account created 2 days before the signing. The recovery phone number on that email is your son's. The room didn't spin. I had been living in a merry-go-round for a month. What it did was slow down. The horse under me realized it was not a horse, and I stepped off. "What do we do now?" I asked. He said we take it to the DA. They can decide whether to open a criminal case. Our civil case continues. The evidence strengthens our position to void the deed and the loan. "Will my son go to jail?" the mother in me asked before the woman could put her hand across her mouth. "I don't know," he said. "Sometimes these cases resolve with restitution agreements, sometimes with diversion programs, sometimes with convictions. We will tell the truth, and the truth will make a map." "Okay," I said, and I meant it. We met with the assistant district attorney, a woman with the posture of a person used to people lying to her professionally. She looked over the video, the logs, the IP records, the emails. She asked me questions a doctor would ask. When did the symptoms start? When did you begin treatment? Are you allergic to denial? She thanked me for coming in. She said they would be in touch. That night, I let myself cry for the boy on my refrigerator and the man who had used me as a bridge. The tears didn't ruin anything. They cleaned a surface I had been too busy to wipe. It took 3 more months to clear my name in the court's eyes. The judge signed an order voiding the deed. The mortgage company acknowledged the fraud. The LLC filed a claim against the lender for selling them a bad loan and stopped sending letters with words like trustee and sale. The DA charged Serena with identity fraud. They charged Lucas with a count that made my mouth dry. Uttering forged instruments or some other biblical-sounding offense. He took a plea that included restitution and a program where men learn how to be honest in public and on paper. When he stood before the judge, he did not look at me. I looked at him anyway, and I saw a boy in a suit too big for him, and I prayed the way you pray when your prayer is not a wish but a description of the person you hope he becomes. When he walked past me after the hearing, he glanced once, quick, the way you look at a house you used to live in. Jenna sent me a text that said, "You ruined our lives." It was the last thing she sent me. She left Lucas 2 months later, or he left her, or both of them left the idea of marriage and went back to being people who didn't like what they saw. During all this, there were bright spots that were not raced through clouds, but steady lamps. April got promoted to assistant branch manager, and we celebrated with cupcakes in the break room because I had been the kind of woman who brings people food when they win before, and I wanted to be her again. Sharon brought me a bundle of mail tied up with string the way grandmothers do in movies. And we opened it together at my table and threw away what was garbage and put in the binder what was important. The basil lived all the way to October, and then I made pesto and froze it in little jars and felt like a pioneer. People in town started coming up to me at the grocery store and in the pew and in the parking lot to tell me their mother's story, their neighbor's story, their sister's story. Once a man in a softball jersey stopped me near the bananas and said, "My grandma gave her grandson her bank card and he took her for $7,000. She didn't press charges. She said that when a house is on fire, you save who you can." I think about that when I think about what family's for.
"What do you think it's for?" I asked. "Not for fires," he said. After my case was resolved, I took the binder and slid it into a new cover. I labeled it with a piece of masking tape and wrote on it, "This is what I did." I brought it to the community center and asked if I could run a workshop for older adults on how to make a binder. Mrs. Valvarez clapped her hands and said, "Finally, a class that will save souls and credit scores."
We met on a Tuesday in the room with the pennants on the wall from the year the high school team went to state. 12 people showed up with boxes and folders and questions. We drank coffee in styrofoam cups and made lists and shared tips like recipes. I told them it wasn't their fault if someone took their name and rode it down the hill like a sled. I told them they should tell a bank teller if something seemed off, and that bank tellers have eyes we should trust more than our pride. I told them that reporting your own child to the police is not an act of hate. It is an act of hope wearing a uniform people mistake for cruelty. At the end of the class, a woman with a floral blouse raised her hand. "Can you ever forgive?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Forgiveness keeps your heart from hardening. It has nothing to do with whether the other person comes over for Christmas. Forgiveness is about putting down what is too heavy. Boundaries are the box you put the thing in and then leave it on the porch. Life did what life does. It moved forward, which is to say it moved in a circle we call a line. Thanksgiving came. I made stuffing the way Frank liked, with extra celery and no raisins because raisins are a crime in the savory arts. I set a place at the end of the table for whoever might wander in because that's the kind of hospitality I can manage now. Planned, proportionate, mine to give. Sharon came by after her rout and hat pie. April brought her fiancé, who is quiet and kind, and looked at her the way a good man should look at a woman who keeps other people's lives from falling apart for a living. Linda's son and his wife sent a postcard from Florida, where the beach is always a promise in December. On the first anniversary of the letter, I drove to 1009 Millstone Court. I had never seen it. The street was a row of houses that looked like they had been cut from a catalog and pasted on the land with good intentions. The house that almost had my name on it was beige and boxy with white trim and a yard that had given up on trying to be more than grass. A for lease sign sat crooked on the lawn. A man in a ball cap walked out with a toolbox. He looked at me without interest, the way a person looks at a passing car. The house meant nothing to him. It meant nothing to me. It was a building I had never lived in and almost lost my life to. On the drive home, I thought about how much of being alive is about knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't. Your name, your peace, your anger, your basil on the sill, your willingness to open your door. When I turned onto my street, I saw Lucas sitting on the bench by the bus stop. He stood when he saw my car, and he put a hand up the way people used to hail taxis in movies. I pulled over. I rolled down the window. "Mom," he said. He looked tired, a tiredness you can't sleep off. "Do you have a minute?" I thought about saying no. I thought about the woman in my class and forgiveness and boundaries and the box on the porch. "I have 5, I said. He came to the passenger side but didn't open the door. He leaned down. We looked at each other over the miles between our faces. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry," he said. He said it too fast, but he said it. I was drowning. We were behind on rent. I could hear the car getting ready to die. The deal felt like a door. I told myself I was going to make it right before you ever knew. Then I told myself other things. Then there were too many things to keep straight. Then I couldn't find the door again. "You could have asked," I said. "You would have said no," he said. "Sometimes no is better than a yes that breaks me," I said. He nodded, and I saw the boy who used to sit in my lap and hold on to my necklace like it was a handle to the world. He stood up. "I'm in the program," he said. I have a guy I talk to who tells me when I'm lying to myself. I have a job that isn't what I thought I'd do, but it pays on Fridays, and I sleep at night. I'm doing the restitution. It will take a long time. Good, I said. He wants to see me, he said. Not at holidays and regular life. Regular life is where I live, I said. If you want to be in regular life with me, you call before you come. You don't ask for money. You come for dinner and bring something you paid for. You leave on time. If you break one of those rules, we take a month off. If you break two, we try again next year. He nodded again. Okay, he said. Okay. Call me Sunday, I said. We'll try a Tuesday. I make chicken and green beans on Tuesdays. That sounds good, like a man who hasn't had a decent green bean in years. He stepped back from the car. Thanks, he said. And it was not enough, and it was something. I rolled the window up. I drove the last block home. I pulled into my spot. I took the binder from the back seat. I went upstairs. I unlocked my door. The basil had gone to seed, and there were little white flowers, and I pinched them off and thought I might try rosemary next. I took the binder to the table and opened it one more time. Then I closed it and slid it onto a shelf that had been waiting. After dinner, I sat at the table with a pen and a piece of paper. I wrote a letter to the women who would take my class next Tuesday. I wrote, "Your name is not a coupon. Your kindness is not a credit line. The love you owe the people in your life can include courage. The world will try to make you choose between peace and honesty. Choose both. Say the truth out loud. While you're at it, make extra pesto. It freezes well." On the day I started the class, I got there early and set out folders and sticky notes and pens that write like forgiveness. People came in carrying the weight of what had been done to them, and we hung that weight on the backs of chairs and sat down as if we were taller. We made binders and we made jokes. We made phone calls and we made a plan for what to do when the next letter comes looking for someone we have never been. When the class ended, a man who had sat in the back with his arms crossed came up to me. He had that look men get when they are about to offer you a story instead of a hug. "My mother," he said, "would have liked you." "I bet I would have liked her," I said. He nodded and put his hands in his pockets. "She was the kind who made soup for the neighbors." "Then we would have been friends," I said. "Thank you," he said, and he turned and left. People left in twos and threes and ones. I stayed in the room and cleaned up, and when I was finished, I turned off the lights, and in the dark, the sun came through the high windows like a promise nobody would be foolish enough to bet against. I went home. I made green beans. I ate alone, which is not the same as being lonely. After I did the dishes, I went to the window and looked at the basil that had given me a season and then stopped. I emptied the pot. I set it by the sink. In the morning, I would fill it with soil and push a new thing into the dirt. You don't realize how resilient hope is until you watch it root in the same place something once died. On Sunday, the phone rang in the afternoon. It was Lucas. He said, "Tuesday?" And I said, "Tuesday." He said, "I'll bring bread." And I said, "From the good bakery." And he laughed, and it sounded like a river that had remembered how to move. Tuesday, he came. He knocked, and he waited. He handed me a brown paper bag with bread that was still warm. He didn't step past the doormat until I said, "Come in." He stood in my kitchen the way men stand when they know they are in a place they once thought would always be theirs. He offered to help, and I gave him things to do. He set the table. He carried water to the basil pot where a new sprig had started. He asked about my day and listened to my answer with his eyes on me. We ate. We talked about the weather and the fact that the highway construction was never going to end, and the way people go quieter in winter and louder in spring. We didn't talk about the binder on the shelf. We didn't need to. It was there, like the fire extinguisher in the hall, like faith, like the neighbor's porch light, like the list of numbers on the fridge you hope you never have to call. After he left, I washed the dishes and dried them and put them away. I looked at my kitchen. It looked like a place where I would like to be if I were tired. I went to the shelf and put my hand on the binder. My name, I said out loud, because names are spells that you must keep saying so they do not forget you, is Evelyn May Harper. I belong to me. And the basil on the sill, and the lamp on the table, and the sky outside my window agreed. Months later, the DA sent a letter saying the case had been closed in a way that meant nobody won, and the right person had been told to stop. Lucas sent me a photo of a paycheck with the caption that said, Fridays. He came for dinner twice a month. He asked me once if I would help him teach a class at the community center for men who needed to see a woman hold her name and not drop it. I said yes. We stood side by side in a room with bad acoustics and good intentions, and he told a group of men who looked like boys and boys who looked like men that the bravest thing he had done was say to a judge, I did it.
Then I opened the binder, because there is always another person who will need to see it. I think of the women who slide into our class with papers loose in their tote bags and pride loose in their chests, and leave with a spine of plastic and a list of numbers and the knowledge that their name is a kind of house. I think of the men who shuffle in and sit in the back and make jokes, because jokes are a way to say, I might cry, and don't, and then later say, I'm sorry, and mean it. I think of the basil and the bread and the binder, and the boy who grew into a man who makes mistakes and corrections and green beans on Tuesdays. The letter that changed my life looked like junk mail. What saved my life looked like this: a binder, a banker, a neighbor, a judge, a Tuesday, a son who learned to knock, a woman who learned to let him wait. If you asked me what I'd do if it happened again, I'd tell you this: I'd do it faster. I'd do it with the same list and the same pen. I'd tell the truth sooner and softer. I'd thank the people in the rooms who believe the evidence of your eyes. I'd call April. I'd wave to Sharon. I'd bake the bread myself if I had to. I'd plant rosemary. I'd keep a pot by the door, not because I'm expecting to put out a fire, but because I'm the sort of woman who has one. And I would look in the mirror on a windless Tuesday and say my full name out loud slowly, like a song, and I would watch my face while I said it, and I would believe myself. In our class, a man asked me if you ever get your old life back. No, I said. You get a new one. Sometimes it is smaller, sometimes it is quieter, sometimes it is yours. And then I gave him a folder and a pen and a list and a smile, and we began again. On the second anniversary, I went to the coffee shop with the chalkboard sign. It said, "You made it this far. Keep going." I sat in the same corner. The same teenage boy was there, except he wasn't the same teenager because nobody is the same 2 years later. He was taller and had a mustache that looked like an experiment. He glanced over and nodded at me, like you do when you recognize a person who fought a dragon in a parking lot and is now buying a muffin. Sharon came in on her day off with a reusable bag and a grin. April stopped by with her baby girl and a laugh that fills the whole room like a bass line. We watched out the window as the regulars came and went. People who had no idea they were in a story waved to people who did. I took a sip of coffee and texted Linda a picture of my cup, and she wrote back a heart. I texted Lucas a picture of the basil, and he wrote back the basil emoji, and then said, "Dinner next week?" I wrote, "I have pesto." He wrote, "I'll bring bread." At home, I hung my coat, and I put my keys in the dish by the door, and I set the mail down on the table. The light coming through the window late in the day is a soft square that lands on the chair where Frank used to sit. And I sat there, because ghosts don't get to keep the best seat. I looked around at a life that is smaller and quieter, and mine. I put my hand on the table and felt the grain of the wood like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes and said, "Thank you," to whatever holds the world together when we are in pieces.